Tonight on News at 9, London attack. 3 attackers cause mayhem near London Bridge. Theresa May says general elections will, however, go ahead.
First at 9. This is Derana 24/7.
Disaster prevention. Government reveals plans to mitigate floods in future. Schools to reopen. Schools closed due to the disaster situation will be reopened tomorrow. Doppler radar system. Mahinda Amaraveera invites Vimal Weerawansa to a debate over Doppler radar system. And in sports headlines, Upul Tharanga suspended. Sri Lanka's stand-in captain receives 2-match suspension. Shocking Europe once again, just 2 weeks after a major suicide bombing in Manchester in the northwest of England. 7 people were killed and at least 48 injured in a terror attack last night in central London. A white van hit pedestrians on London Bridge at around 10 p.m. before 3 suspected militants got out and began attacking people in nearby Borough Market with knives. UK authorities have not raised the terror level from severe, and UK Prime Minister Theresa May confirmed that the general election will be held on Thursday.
Metropolitan Police confirmed that the 3 men were the only attackers involved and that they were pursued and killed by police officers shortly after the attack. The attackers were also wearing explosive vests, which were later confirmed to be hoaxes. UK media reports that investigators have identified the attackers and 12 arrests were made in a raid in Barking, East London, in connection with the incident. A heavy police presence remains at the scene of the attack, and all main political parties except UKIP suspended national general election campaigning today.
As a mark of respect, the 2 political parties have suspended our national campaigns for today. But violence can never be allowed to disrupt the democratic process. So those campaigns will resume in full tomorrow, and the general election will go ahead as planned on Thursday.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May also said that there needs to be an international agreement to regulate cyberspace where extremists operate.
We cannot allow this ideology the safe space it needs to breed. Yet that is precisely what the internet and the big companies that provide internet-based services provide.
Last night's incident is the 3rd terror attack in the UK in 3 months, following the car and knife attack in Westminster in March, which left 5 people dead, and the Manchester bombing less than 2 weeks ago, in which 22 people were killed.
And in Sri Lanka, Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, says the framework to hold the local government elections still hasn't been set up by relevant government authorities. He made these remarks at an event held at the Ibagamua Central College yesterday.
The framework to hold the local government election is not in place yet, and that is the reason why it still hasn't been held. For example, I can't decide on the number of overs that must be decreased when there's rain in the cricket field. That decision must be taken by the ICC. Similarly, our ICC is our parliament. They still haven't established the necessary laws for us to hold the local government election. That is why I have to roam everywhere aimlessly. But my roaming is important to hold the election. It doesn't matter to us who wins the election. We are bound to carry out our duties according to our conscience. We've stopped all election violations, and when we couldn't stop them legally, we threatened them.
And on the developments of the floods and landslide situation in Sri Lanka, the death toll in the disaster caused by adverse weather has risen to 212, according to the Disaster Management Centre. 79 persons remain missing due to floods and landslides in several districts, while 717,622 are affected. While the landslide warning by the NBRO remains in effect in several areas, floodwaters are receding in others.
Other Derana reporters were able to visit Ayagama after floodwaters receded. Attempts to normalize daily routines by the residents of the Kaluthara district were also witnessed by other Derana today. Residents in Anguruwatota and Maduravala are gradually returning to their normal routines after clearing and cleaning what they can. Meanwhile, residents of Ehaliyagoda, Ellawala, Borulugoda, Ihalakanda, Mudunkotuwa in the Ratnapura district were able to begin cleaning their houses. Water levels have, however, not gone down in Palatuwa along the Mathara-Akurasa road. Meanwhile, the National Building Research Organisation has not lifted the landslide warning in the districts of Ratnapura, Kegol, Kalutara, Gol, Mathara, Hambantota and Nuwara. This landslide in Batahena Hill, Ehaliyagoda, occurred on the 26th, but the earth remains unstable.
That jack tree was on the top of the hill. It has come up to here. The soil and mud is still in motion.
According to BBC Sinhala service, there is a threat of a landslide on Pahiyangala Hill, where a prehistoric cave may be affected. Minister of Education Akila Viraj Karyawasam visited the location and expressed his views on the current situation.
We have decided to make a report using the expertise on the subject. After completing the report, we hope to take action. It is our duty to preserve these sites for future generations. We have the ability to obtain financial provisions from the Central Cultural Fund. As a government, I have to say that we have given this matter our attention.
Meanwhile, 12 families of Samanalagama in Hatton have been evacuated by the Hatton police. The NBRO also instructed villagers to evacuate if they experience rainfall of more than 125 millimeters within the next 24 hours.
We were asked to go to the open ground where they have built 5 temporary rooms. We don't like it. We are requesting government quarters which are not in use. Otherwise, we can rent a house if the government pays for it.
Meanwhile, there is a thick mist on the Hatton-Nuwara and Hatton-Colombo main roads. The Hatton police instruct drivers to be careful while travelling on these roads.
And the Derana humanitarian initiative continued its distribution of relief, and these poured into Derana even after the successful conclusion of Phase 1, which also continues the series of medical camps conducted jointly with the Government Medical Officers Association.
The first phase of the Derana humanitarian initiative wrapped up on Friday, and the collected relief aid continues to benefit those affected by the disaster across the country. Clothing was distributed to people affected by floods in Aluwana in Morawaka. Clothes and dry rations were distributed at the Mathara Navu Menapurana Vihara to affected people from Godapitiya, Uyangoda and Akurasa. Meanwhile, Derana and the Government Medical Officers Association continued to conduct a series of medical clinics established to control health issues in disaster-affected areas.
Over 200 clinics have been held by Derana together with the GMOA. About 1,000 doctors from the GMOA headquarters and about 2,000 to 2,500 doctors from across the country have volunteered for service. Having observed the affected areas, we conclude that certain groups in those areas will need not only regular treatment, but also treatment for non-communicable diseases, epidemics, as well as psychological trauma. The GMOA is hoping to hold mental health clinics as well.
A Derana medical clinic will also be held tomorrow from 9 am onwards at the Wanniyawatta Kiripatkala Vidyalaya in Nividikala.
And the Minister for Education, Akila Viraj Karyawasam, says that all schools in the Western Province and a majority of schools in the Southern and Sabaragamu provinces will be reopened tomorrow. The Minister made the remark while speaking to media in Pahiyangala today.
We have decided to reopen all schools which were closed in 8 districts tomorrow, except for a number of schools in the Sabaragamu and Southern provinces. We have issued the notice through the zonal directors of education. About 20,000 students have been displaced. We have notified the students that they may attend school tomorrow dressed in any suitable attire.
And Minister of Home Affairs Vajira Abewardena vows that in 5 years' time, the government will be able to effectively mitigate natural disasters. Addressing a media briefing at the UNP headquarters in Sirikotha, the minister added that this would only happen with the support of the public and all political parties.
We have not been able to control the Ging, Nilwala and Kalu rivers. Before the next Sinhala and Tamil New Year dawns, we must be ready to build dams on these rivers as required by feasibility reports. Some believe that the disaster occurred due to the Southern Expressway. It is not so. The issue is that we have failed to control the water flowing from upstream. As a government, we clearly state that in 5 years' time, if we receive support from the public and political parties, these floods will not return. The President and the Prime Minister can source sufficient funds for this project from abroad.
The minister added that a proposal will be made at Tuesday's cabinet meeting on providing concessions for the loss of passports due to the disaster situation. He added that the Ministry of Home Affairs has decided to replace lost birth certificates, death certificates, wedding certificates and title deeds free of charge.
Still on the disaster situation, the Janatha Vimukthi Peramuna calls for an investigation into the insufficient weather predictions issued by the Department of Meteorology. The JVP further emphasizes that proper planning with regard to disaster management and weather forecasting must be established in the country in order to prevent the loss of human lives due to natural disasters. Politburo members of the JVP made these remarks at a media briefing held in the party's headquarters today.
There has been a lot of fraudulent activity related to the Doppler radar weather system which was set up at Gongala in Deniaya. They are not making any use of it. With that sort of machine, we should be able to make accurate predictions as to how much rainfall can be expected in a particular area. There is absolutely no point in saying there will be this much rainfall in an entire province. There's a huge problem with this weather prediction process. We hope for an investigation into the matter. Further, the disaster management plans which are being implemented after the disaster are also feeble. These kinds of landslides might occur again in the future. In order to prevent lives being lost due to landslides, a state institute must be established and vested with the necessary powers. Within the state mechanism related to disaster management, everything stops after the distribution of relief goods. It is most unfortunate. The government must at least propose a way to provide relief to the businesses that were affected. The tea industry is heavily affected and many tea factories are damaged. Paddy fields are affected to the extent of not being able to use them for harvesting anytime soon. So the government must now reveal whether they had included these farmers and other businessmen in the compensation scheme. There's no point in handling this situation like they did with the Samasara, Salawa and Mithotamula incidents. Don't make people living in these 4 districts protest. And don't make them the villains once they do take to the streets. Before all that happens, make sure to provide them with compensation according to a fair and transparent system.
Still in local news, State Minister of Mahali Development Mahinda Amaravira challenges parliamentarian Wimal Veerawansa to a debate over the controversy surrounding the Doppler weather radar system which was imported from the United States of America. The State Minister made this challenge today, reacting to comments made by Veerawansa at a media briefing yesterday.
අවුරුදු 3ක් යනකොත් සවි කරගන්න බැරි වුණා. ආපදා කළමනා කරන වර්තමාන ඇමතිවරයා කියනවා ඒක සවි කරන්න හැකියාව තිබුණා නම් මේ විපත කලින් දැනගෙන මේ විපත ගොඩක් අඩු කරගන්න තිබුණා කියලා. ඒ කාලේ කවුද ආපදා බාර ඇමති?
So, who was the Minister of Disaster Management at that time? It was Mahinda Amaravira. You should ask him why they didn't set up this system for 3 years. And he is the future leader our current president wants from the southern province.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා දකුණෙන් හදන්න හදන ඊළඟ නායකයා.
It seems they weren't allowed to do anything. So, are they doing anything productive now?
Reacting to the comments made by parliamentarian Wimal Veerawansa, State Minister Mahinda Amaravira had this to say.
Mr. Wimal Veerawansa gets confused and makes mistakes all the time. This machine was ordered 4 years ago. I was not involved with this at all. I don't know whether he was involved with the process. There is a big story behind the matter, and I even appointed a special committee to look into it. I gave its report to the Presidential Secretariat Office. It isn't right of him to put the blame on me over this. I invite him to a debate.
Parliamentarian Bandulu Gunawardena calls for an investigation into the reliability of the 2016 accounts of the Ministry of Finance. In a media briefing in Colombo today, he also said that the government should take quick measures to compensate those affected by the floods after a proper assessment.
The former finance minister says the whole country is insured. He says the compensation for those affected by last year's flood was paid via the government insurance scheme and amounted to 1,300 billion rupees. This number is hard to believe. He says 1,500 have been insured this time. There is a crisis situation in the country regarding the reliability of the statements of the former Minister of Finance. This is the result of tampering with statistics and data under his authority, which has never occurred under any finance minister of this country. The no-confidence motion against Minister Ravi Karnanayaka regarding altering the statistics in the budget has not yet been taken into debate, and the motion is still in the order book of the Parliament. Therefore, we are requesting an investigation into the issue next week.
The former chairman of Bank of Ceylon also expressed his views regarding the matter.
The Auditor General says that he cannot provide any statement regarding the 2016 accounts of the Ministry of Finance. He also says that he did not receive the evidence which he asked for. Therefore, the financial statements of 2016 were presented to the Parliament without the views of the Auditor General. This is a violation of the Constitution. As the head of the institution, the Finance Minister has neglected his responsibilities. To conceal the incident, the Finance Minister was given a different portfolio.
With businesses in the country continuing to feel the pinch brought on by the inclement weather, Minister of Plantation Industries Navin Dissanayake says that the tea board will be authorized for the cess levy to be given as a loan for tea factory owners. Talking to Other Derana, the minister went on to explain the measures taken by the ministry to provide relief to flood-hit plantation sector players.
At the moment, feel that especially in the smallholder sector, maybe there is the effect of about maximum 5%. But we are taking all necessary measures to make sure that those affected areas, especially the plantations in the tea smallholding areas, are quickly replanted. I'm also going to authorize the tea board to use its cess levy to be utilized to help to give a loan to the tea factory owners. So that they can start operating as quickly as possible. I'm determined to make sure that the floods, although very damaging to the morale and the psyche of our people, and I will move very quickly to ensure that tea production comes back to normal.
And let's take a look at how markets will perform this week. Here's Dimantha Matthew from First Capital Holdings with our weekly forecast.
With Sri Lanka recovering from the flood situation, we expect some recovery in the market activity with more local investor participation. Market may continue to show some downward pressure with continued profit taking in big caps though. However, we do not expect the selling pressure to last for long as valuations continue to be attractive in the overall market. We believe the renewed local and foreign buying interest may come back into the market in the coming days.
From the international business world, U.S. job growth slowed in May and employment gains in the prior 2 months were not as strong as previously reported, suggesting that labour market is losing momentum despite the unemployment rate falling to a 16-year low of 43%. According to the U.S. Labor Department, non-farm payrolls increased 138,000 last month, and the economy created 66,000 fewer jobs than previously reported in March and April. There's growing anecdotal evidence of companies struggling to find qualified workers, and economists believe that companies might be holding off hiring amid worries that political scandals engulfing U.S. President Donald Trump could imperil his economic agenda. In your sports stories, Sri Lanka were beaten soundly by South Africa in their Champions Trophy opener last night. Having been put into bat, the Proteas gave the Lions a 300-run target and Sri Lanka were bowled out for just 203, giving the South Africans a 96-run win.
Sri Lanka started the match well with the opening bowlers preventing the South Africans from scoring quick runs early on, but a controlled 115-ball 103 from Hashim Amla helped the Proteas to 299. In reply, Niroshan Dikwala scored a quick-fire 41 off 33 balls, sharing a 69-run opening stand with Upul Tharanga. Leg spinner Imran Tahir clawed the Proteas back into the game in the middle overs with 4 wickets, helping his team bowl Sri Lanka out in just 41.3 overs. Tharanga managed a 69-ball 57 and Kusal Perera remained unbeaten on 44, but the rest of the batting order capitulated on the way to a 96-run defeat.
All over and done with 96-run win for South Africa.
Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's stand-in captain Upul Tharanga has been suspended for 2 matches because of a serious overrate offence in last evening's game. Sri Lanka took more than 4 hours to bowl 50 overs and match referee David Bourne ruled they were short of the target by 4 overs even after making time allowances. Staying with the Champions Trophy, the 4th game of the tournament began earlier today with India taking on arch-rivals Pakistan in a Group B clash. Having been put into bat, India put on a score of 319 in 48 overs, losing just 3 wickets in a rain-affected first innings. Pakistan required 324 runs to win in 48 overs as per the Duckworth-Lewis method.
No better player, made a bit. Support delivery, sounded sweet, and the distance is fine. Brings up the 50 as well for Rohit Sharma.
And in football, Real Madrid became the first team in 27 years to successfully defend the Champions League title when they beat Juventus in last evening's final. Madrid took the game 4-1 in Cardiff, giving them a record 12th title and a 3rd in 4 seasons.
Cristiano Ronaldo opened the scoring in the 20th minute when he swept in Dani Carvajal's pass. Mario Mandzukic then equalized just 7 minutes later with a sublime overhead kick. Casemiro restored Real's lead when his shot deflected in off Sami Khedira. Ronaldo then scored at the near post off a Luka Modric cross before Marco Asensio emphasized Real's superiority with a precise finish in the last minute.
Still from the Champions League match last night, over 1,000 Juventus fans watching the match final in one of Turin's main squares were injured last night after a firecracker provoked a stampede. At least 7 people were seriously injured, including a 7-year-old boy in critical condition with head and chest injuries.
Thousands of football fans were watching a live relay of Juventus's Champions League final against Real Madrid in Cardiff when a loud noise was heard and rumours of an explosion spread. A sudden rush in the middle of the crowd caused a surge, pushing people against barriers, and many fans began to run out of the centre of San Carlos Square. Police have set up an information point to help people find loved ones and are investigating the cause of the incident.
And that's all we have on your prime time news tonight. But before we go, we'd like to leave you with visuals from a traditional cheese rolling contest held in the English countryside. Thousands of people gathered to watch racers tumbling downhill after the coveted prize, a large block of cheese. Having a pleasant evening. We wish you a good night.
news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.